Hello, this is Ben Moore with the Office of Energy Assistance. I am the Finance Manager, and this video will help walk you through budgeting for Personnel and Fringe in the 2021 CSBG data budget. The budget line items that this video pertains to are budget line items 101 and 102 for program support and 301 and 302 for the administration category. The Personnel and Fringe lines for this video are grouped to include both program support and direct administration lines. Please pay special attention to what items specifically belong in admin, or apply those portions of cost that pertain to admin staff to the direct admin lines. The items that must be charged to admin for the personnel category are wages and fringes for staff salaries, such as the executive director, fiscal officer, bookkeepers, and other agency-level administrative staff. Again, they must be charged to line items 301 for personnel and 302 accordingly for fringe, and they may not be charged to the program support equivalents of those lines, budget line items 102 or 101 and 102. Each tab of the budget is broken down into two sections. The top section is the cost grid and the bottom section is the narrative. The minimum requirements for the cost grid section of personnel are that you must list the name and position of each employee budgeted to that grant, including vacant positions. In that case, you would just list vacant in the name column. You need to enter the full annual salary for each employee, or alternately, you could list a monthly salary or an hourly salary. If you list the monthly, you would put the duration of time as 12, and if it's the hourly wage, you would list the number of annual hours, which in most cases is 2,080 for a full-time employee. And then you would also list the percentage of time that that employee spent working on this particular grant, the 21 CSBG grant. The total percentage of time for each person cannot exceed 100% across all the grant budgets they are budgeted on, including the percentages listed on program support and direct admin if that employee happens to be split between the two, if they spend some of their time in program support and some in admin. So please make sure that any employees you budget do not exceed 100% when you add up the percentage of their salary that's charged across all grants. Here's an example of the three separate ways you could list an employee. Here is the example of annual salary. You'd put their annual salary here. The basis would be per year. And then in this case, or you would put the percentage of time they're spending on this grant. For the example, we have 100, but it could be, it should be the accurate percentage of time that they're spending on this grant. The length of time for someone you list with an annual salary should be 1 because it implies a whole year, and then it will calculate out their total cost to be charged to this grant. If you're entering them as a monthly wage, you would put the monthly wage or salary there, put the basis as month, and percentage of time. Again, you would accurately represent how much, what percentage of their time they're spending on this grant, and the length of time typically would be 12 because there are 12 months in the year. If they do spend only certain months of the year in CSBG, you could reduce the number to those number of months, but you would also need to make sure that the percentage of their time spent on this grant during that time is accurate. That, again, will also calculate out the total cost to be charged to this grant. And this final example is an hourly wage. You would put their hourly wage there, put it by hour as the basis, the accurate percentage of the time they're spending in this grant, and then again, typically 2,080 is the number of hours in a normal full-time year, and that would also calculate out the same cost. As you can see, if the person makes the same wage, but you just break it out in these three different manners, it will all come out the same. The minimum requirements for the narrative section of the personnel budget are that you need to give a brief description showing how each person's job duties pertain to the grant that they're being charged to. If an employee is listed on both program support and admin, or on more than one grant, please tell how their salary is divided or allocated among each of the grants that they are charged to. List the grants and percentage applied to each, and again, they must total 100. Additionally, state how the percentage applied is determined. The most common example of how you would allocate a staff member's time is timesheet. So the example of the description may be that the allocation across each grant is determined by timesheets. As far as the general items to include in the personnel budget category, you essentially would add all the staff who are being charged to this grant, but one note is that you do not include contractual staff. Anyone who's not an agency employee would not be listed here. So if you have temporary staff or you hire staff through a temporary agency and you pay the temporary agency, they would not be listed under personnel. They would be budgeted in the contractual categories. If it's for program support purposes, it'd be 106. If they are administrative in nature, it would be budget line item 306, contractual. As far as fringe, the items that must be charged to admin are the fringes, including but not limited to health insurance, life insurance, workers' comp, retirement, and Social Security for the executive director, bookkeepers, and other agency level staff. Again, the staff listed on fringe should match the staff listed on personnel, assuming that everyone in the personnel category is paid some fringe benefits. The minimum requirements for the cost grid for fringe are that there are really two methods that you can calculate out the fringe. The first method is if you use a set fringe rate for figuring fringe benefits, you would use that grant's portion of their total annual salary, which is the last column on the personnel tab. You would carry that down, and then you would apply the standard fringe rate to get this grant's portion of the fringe. And here's an example of how that would work. In the first scenario, you would take this employee one, their percentage or their amount of the salary charged to this grant is $25,000. Down here in the fringe category, you would carry down this $25,000 to the base. So you would have the same employee listed, their base is 25, and then you would apply the standard fringe percentage. So in this case, 39%. So you would bring down their full salary, charge the 39% fringe rate to get a total cost. The second method is if you use the percentage of time devoted to the project or program, and you take that percentage and apply it to their annual fringe amount across all programs. So in this method, you would essentially calculate their total dollar value of their fringe benefits separately, and then you would apply the percentage of time that they're spending on this grant to that amount. Either method you use should result in the same fringe amount. So again, here's an example of method 2. So in this method 2, you would take this first employee's cost that you're charging to this grant from the personnel tab, which is $15,991. You would carry that, or you would take the 20%, that is the percentage of time they're spending on this grant, and you would apply it to a separately calculated fringe base. So you would calculate the total fringe that you're going to pay for this employee number 1 separately. You would put it in this base column, and then you would apply the same percentage of time that they're spending on the grant to that amount to come up with the fringe for that employee. The minimum requirements for the narrative section are that you need to list what items are included in the fringe, including the percentages for each item calculated based on the percentage of salary and the dollar amounts for each item that are based on flat fees. One note is that you should explain the reason if the fringe rates for the first method or the annual fringe base and the second method differ between employees. And some explanations of that may be that there are items that are fringe items that are a flat amount. Typically, health insurance falls into that category where you would charge a flat amount for health insurance for each employee regardless of their salary. So in that case, the percentage of their salary that makes up that particular fringe benefit will vary from employee to employee. And here is an example of a good narrative that would be included in the fringe benefits tab. Here, they clearly lay out that the fringe benefits for part-time employees include, they list all the items that it includes. They include the percentage of that employee's salary that is charged for each item that is included in fringe, and they just are very clear in how it's calculated. In this particular case, they have category for part-time employees because the fringe is a little different, and clearly identify that for a full-time employee. And that is for the fringe benefit method number 1. For fringe benefit method number 2, they clearly describe how the fringe base is calculated because, as I mentioned, it is calculated separately outside of the spreadsheet. So you would give a clear formula for how that is calculated, similar to the one that's listed here. And if you need to, I'd recommend pausing the video and taking a closer look at all the clear description that they give in this particular example. And here there's a note that just says the rate is the same percentage from personnel tab for staff percentage of time in the grant. So that's where we mentioned if you use the second method where you calculate fringe separately, you would need to use the same percentage of time that employee is spending in this particular grant. You would carry that number over from the personnel tab. There are separate videos available as guides to completing all of the individual cost tabs in this budget spreadsheet, so I would recommend that you watch any other particular category videos that may help you complete the budget. And I thank you for watching.